Hello, this is George from George's Music Blog, and today I'm talking about the debut album from Squarepusher, Feed Me Weird Things. Now, I'm coming at this review from the perspective of a fan. I've been a fan of Squarepusher's music for a long time, best part of 25 years. He's one of my favourite artists, producers, performers. I've got a lot of time for Squarepusher. So if you like Squarepusher, hopefully you'll find my perspective interesting. If you're not so familiar with his music, maybe looking to find out a bit more about what it's all about, then hopefully this will be a useful introduction. This is part of a series of videos I'm creating where I'll go through the bulk of Squarepusher's discography, and you can find links to some of those in the description below. So, with all that being said, let's go. Feed Me Weird Things came out in 1996, released on Rephlex Records, which was the label set up by Aphex Twin with his business partner Grant Wilson-Claridge. Squarepusher had already been making something of a name for himself in a relatively small scene with releases on the experimental drum and bass imprint Spymania, and he first came to the attention of Aphex Twin playing a gig at a pub in North London. This experience is memorably recounted in the sleeve notes to the album. I've got the recent vinyl reissue here, so I'll just read you a quick quote from this. Someone had just got glassed right in front of me at the George Roby pub, Finsbury Park, North London, and I was thinking I wish I'd stayed at home in my studio. Oh, I might as well stay and watch the bloke with the bass guitar who keeps wandering around behind the DJ booth. That, I thought, is almost certainly going to be good for a laugh. The next thing I felt was a fuzzy vibration, as monophonic sound waves that had travelled from the other side of the room at the speed of light, compressing the air and displacing the smoke of 10 spliffs, hit me in both ear bones simultaneously. It was Mr. Jenkinson who was turning my heartbeat into the sound of a ring-piece, modulated, resonant, phase-locked, trapezoid, backwards, edited, flanged kick drum. And so it goes on. Now, there's no mistaking that even at this early stage in his career, Squarepusher had a unique and distinctive sound, one that synthesized disparate elements from jazz to jungle, acid house, dub, rave, with its marrying of sampled and chopped breakbeats, with his live bass guitar and a plethora of other instruments. But for all its freewheeling creativity and originality, Feed Me Weird Things is something of a flawed debut, even if its worst crimes are a surfeit of ambition and youthful naivety. Over the course of 12 tracks and just more than an hour, Squarepusher demonstrates his prowess at arrangement and composition, with pieces ranging from jazzier cuts to straight up drum and bass jungle to more experimental forays that touch on dub, ambient, and what would be called drill and bass, which was a genre label I could never get on board with, but was applied to lots of other artists who were pushing manipulation of breakbeats to new extremes at the time, such as Aphex Twin, Luke Viber, Amon Tobin, etc. Some debut albums arrive with an artist's sound seemingly fully formed. Think Aphex's Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92, or Music Has the Right to Children by Boards of Canada. These are seminal albums that have stood the test of time and practically defined a sound for a generation. Feed Me Weird Things is not one of those debuts. It's too raw, too patchy, and with a little bit more padding than it needs. What it is the sound of a highly original and creative artist finding their musical voice. In just a few short years, Squarepusher's technical and compositional prowess would far outstrip what he was doing on Feed Me Weird Things, making it quickly sound dated. But the germination of some of his longest-running creative concerns are here, and listening to it now from the vantage point of familiarity with his subsequent work, you really get the sense that this is where some of those first key ideas were being tested out in embryonic form. Now let's get into the detail of some of the specific tracks. Tundra, which is track 2 on the album, is archetypal Squarepusher. By his own description, an attempt to combine hard-hitting tech-step beats with an emotive melody. The deep and moody pads handily evoke the chilly title, and the amen breaks, when they come in, are chopped and processed to absolute precision, although not in a way that was radically different from what some other jungle producers were doing at the time. Partway through the track, we're treated to a brighter melody, as if some sunlight is appearing over the Arctic scene. Before then, it's back to the rolling beats and bass lines. It's an absolutely killer track, a moody jungle epic that points the way for the genre to be elevated. Easily one of the best tracks on the album. In a similar vein, Theme from Ernest Borgnine is another absolute banger. It opens with this beatifically optimistic melody, which feels like the sun peeking over the horizon, before a 178 BPM breakbeat slams in that would rouse even the sleepiest raver. The sunny melody and the thumping breakbeat alone would make it a decent enough progressive jungle track, but about 6 minutes in, Squarepusher switches it up. It introduces this savage 303 line that transforms the last portion of the track into a frenzied acid rave up. More rough and ready than Tundra, but it's another absolute banger. Probably the best examples of where Squarepusher takes things in a more left field direction and accentuates the bass guitar are tracks like Windscale 2 and the Swifty. Windscale 2 opens with a bass riff, apparently one that Jenkinson came up with when he was still a teenager, over some tentative breaks that gradually build in intensity as they're joined by ominous chords in the background and a cello effect which apparently was created by Jenkinson rubbing a 50p coin on the strings of his bass guitar. The Swifty is Squarepusher's attempt to fuse jazz and dub, and if the track has a live feel to it, that's because it was recorded before he'd got his hands on a multi-track recorder, which meant the live elements, the bass guitar and presumably the keyboard, had to be played in one take alongside the sequenced elements. Some melodic components are introduced in the second half of the track, which is more enjoyable than the first, but this is a style he would do much better on subsequent albums like Hard Normal Daddy just a year or two later. Here the result is a little bit less than the sum of its parts. Two harsher cuts that point towards the drill and bass genre that Squarepusher got tagged with at the time are tracks like Dimotane Co. and North Circular, both of which test the outer limits of what was possible by messing with manipulated breakbeats at the time. Dimotane Co. one can just about imagine being played in a club, although you'd want to skip past the 20-second burst of white noise that opens the track. It does at least have a relatively consistent beat and another fizzing 303 acid line. Playing North Circular at a party would be a surefire way to get yourself banned from the stereo. It's a dense and claustrophobic piece full of endlessly sliced and diced breakbeats and atonal effects. The title is a reference to the ring road that runs round the outside of North London and apparently is a suggestion that this should be played at full volume on a car stereo. Neither of these tracks is for the faint-hearted, but if you like the harder end of drum and bass or breakcore, then these could possibly be considered early examples of sort of proto-breakcore. Elsewhere, there's a larkiness and a sense of fun about Feed Me Weird Things that rarely finds its way into Squarepusher's music after about 1998. Smedley's melody is a jaunty little jazz excursion led by the live bass guitar, in this case an attempt to play two time signatures simultaneously. The Amen break is here again, although in this context it sounds like something from a drum marching band. As a piece of knockabout fun, it's amusing enough, but it's not the kind of experiment that would get past quality control on later albums. In the end, the bounty of ideas and creativity on Feed Me Weird Things almost end up being its downfall, meaning it lacks coherence and consistency as an album. And it is a bit too long, especially with the two bonus tracks, Theme from Goodbye Ronaldo and Deep Fried Pizza, that were included on the recent reissue. But I don't say all that to judge it harshly. While some debut albums may drop out of the sky seemingly fully formed, many more are simply compilations of an artist's best work up to that point, and that's exactly what Feed Me Weird Things feels like. In retrospect, the different themes Jenkinson was tying together here, and the unexpected synergies he would unearth, for example between freeform jazz and the boundary-pushing experiments of jungle, would seem obvious, but here they're just a little bit too raw and disjointed to present something close enough to a coherent musical vision. Instead, I see Feed Me Weird Things as Squarepusher's manifesto, his mission statement, staking out a claim on a unique bit of territory on the musical landscape, somewhere between jazz, jungle, drum and bass, acid house, dub and rave. It's messy, it's flawed, but given he was operating in a style that was at the tip of the cutting edge at the time, it's inevitable that it would quickly sound dated as technology moved on. But it's also bold, loud, fun, and endlessly creative. And how many debut albums can you really think of that contain as many original ideas as this one? That's it from me. I don't tend to rank albums or give them a score out of 10, but take it from me, I consider this one very much worth your time if you like this kind of music. Maybe it sounds like I've judged Feed Me Weird Things a little bit harshly. Don't get me wrong, it's a really original album, really cool, fun album. There's just a lot better ones in Squarepusher's discography. Thanks for watching. Please like the video and check out my channel for more of the same. Bye-bye.